Hey, good morning. Good morning. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. We are here. We're thankful for another day. Thankful for you in these days and time. Man, did you all see that fantastic virtual Martin Luther King celebration in Long Beach? Wow, thank you guys so much if you were able to catch that. COVID-19 has got us counseled from doing parades and festivals and all of the cool stuff that we normally do across our land in our communities. But, we were able to get together with some folks, Leadership Long Beach and them, and the city of Long Beach Councilwoman Suli Sorrow, and you, the community, Kenny Lattimore, Cy Smith, the Real Band, Brown Suede, all these different people, great artists, great entertainment, but plus just an introspective on acts of service that are being executed all around the city of Long Beach. We made the evening news too. You see us on Channel 2? What? Great stuff. Well, you know what? The thing is that today, after we've celebrated, we had a great time, and we, offered, our positive vibrations on the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. It caused me to really reflect this morning and think about we get caught up in the I Have a Dream speech and all of that. That was 1963, but close the years past 1963 when Dr. King began to really, evolve his thought into a more revolutionary form. And, he began to talk about the economic disparities in our communities versus general white America. How the systems of systemic racism were destroying communities, destroying our essence. He was speaking out very strongly against the Vietnam War. I was a young lad in those days, and I know the guys that were older than me in the neighborhood. You could look forward to getting drafted, and people had draft numbers and all this whole thing. Dr. King spoke, ferociously, I suppose, against that. He went down to Memphis, Tennessee to stand with the sanitation workers who were largely black people, and, standing against the unfair wages there with the brothers that were on those sanitation trucks. And, these are the reasons why they killed him. And I think that it's time, as we look here in 2021, what is happening in this country. Even right now, as we speak over there in Washington, D.C., we've been getting text all weekend from our friends out there in Washington, D.C. that said, man, it's like a war zone out here. Soldiers everywhere, Still, President Trump has refused to concede. Still, our inauguration is tomorrow. And we don't know what the heck is going to happen. We last coffee conversations that we had, we saw a bird's eye view from somebody's GoPro that stormed the Capitol building, and you've been seeing on the news pictures of them going into the different representatives' desks and taking pictures of precious documents. And these things that are relatively unheard of in these United States. But it is a wake-up call for us in our community. That these folks want to keep the status quo, systemic racism, police violence, all that kind of stuff that we've been protesting against, especially in the last year. They want to keep that. And so, our consciousness has to be awakened. But, I began to think about this. It's like, man, I wonder what my friends over there in Africa, they're looking over here going, good groove. Why? What's going on over there in America? So I thought I would reach out to a good friend of mine. I can't tell you, boy, we go back. I can't say we go back like 8 tracks, but we certainly go back quite a ways. And she's just a good friend of mine. She is a woman of God first. Let me just tell y'all. She is a woman of God, like for real, first. But she is also one of the most popular media personalities in South Africa. You know, one time I was on one of my tours over to South Africa, right? And we had gone over to Soweto. And she calls, she says, Greg, I will come meet you guys over in Soweto. Man, when she walked in the door, people were rolling up on her. Can I have your autograph? I mean, she was really, it was like, man, you know, you could really, really see how she touches the people in her part of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Thami Ngubeni. Good morning.
Well, you're saying good morning, Greg, but it's actually about 7 p.m. my time.
Ah,
Uh, so really, it's good evening from my side, but good
that's
morning to you.
yes, yes, yes. Wow, wow. Look, so good to see your face. Look at you.
It's been so long. It's been so long,
Yes.
and I must say, South Africa misses you. I
Ah,
know not only are you a good friend of mine, but you're also a good friend of the country. I mean, you come here so often and you bring a whole lot of African Americans to come into the country and get to experience South Africa. So we certainly miss you. We can't wait for COVID to end, and
yes.
hopefully you'll be coming to see us again.
I can't wait. you know, Tommy. Look, we have spoken a few times about like, man, I need to move over there, and it's feeling like it's that time nowadays. As I look at what's happening in the United States now, when you view us in the United States, and I mean, you've been over here a few times, and we'll get over. We want to talk. I want to talk about your dad too, it a little bit too. You know, but what are you feeling when you look at the United States and what's going on?
It's a display of truth. That's what I see it as. I think it's a display of the status quo of the way things really are, in the sense that racism is something that is, experienced around the world. Discrimination is something that's experienced around the world. The struggle for power is something that's experienced around the world. The fight for freedom and people's rights, those are entrenched around the world, and the peoples of the world continue to fight for those. So what we're seeing happening in the United States is really just a demonstration of a global world situation. It just happens to be playing out in the United States now, and perhaps that's the question: us seeing it happening in the United States, a country that has always positioned itself and has been known as I guess, the hub and the heart of democracy, the father, the very father, or even the mother, because it's the woman who gives birth to. So perhaps, that has incubated democracy and then transported that to the rest of the world. But I think it's a time of reckoning in many ways, because the problems that perhaps that the country has faced, over the centuries are once again, rearing themselves up. So I always see times of uncertainty and times of shifting also as times of opportunity and of times of really addressing problems that perhaps in the past were swept under the carpet or were explained away. But maybe now it's an opportunity to really just redress and realign and forge an authentic identity that is going to help the country and the people move forward. So that's really just what I'm thinking right now. But watching
Right.
it unfold and watching what happened on Capitol Hill, it felt like an altered reality, to be honest with you, because I don't think I would have ever expected to see that happening in the United States, Capitol Hill, and also just seeing the manner of the response that the protesters, if one can call them the protesters, received from the police.
Right, because if
Compare
that
that.
was us storming the Capitol, it would be a bloodbath.
Yeah, and that's why I say it's a reality check, because that is the situation, that is the status quo, and maybe it's time to start addressing those type of systemic discrimination principles that are already in place. People
We,
are comparing that to what happened with Black Lives Matter, and that it was Black people who were marching there. it would have been a completely different dynamic.
Different story, sure.
Um, and
We
so that
saw
that was quite interesting to watch.
Yeah, we saw last night some I can't remember what program it was, but they were kind of doing a review of the whole thing, and they showed the people who stormed the Capitol literally sitting on the floor of the Capitol building and going through everything, and then one police officer enters
They're
the
standing there.
chamber. And he just says, "Hey, do you mind just getting up and moving along?" I mean, if that would have been us, Black Lives Matter, it would have been them storming in there with guns and already shooting us. It's just such a double standard that happens in this country. And I think that what happens too, what you're seeing is, I believe, maybe we fell, Black America, we kind of were lulled to sleep. We were able to elect our first Black president, and thought that it's a post-racial society and all of this here, but now we see, if you didn't believe it before, you believe it now. The racism still is alive and well in America, and they're fighting to the death to keep it that way.
But what I believe, Greg, as well, is that it's important to see it. It's important to name something and give it an identity and acknowledge it in order to really be able to battle it out and to address it. And so this was not only for Black people to see, but for the whole world to see that this is the status quo. This is what Black Lives Matter is really all about as well. You're seeing how people are treated differently because of the color of their skin, how a white life seems to matter more than a Black life, how a white life is more respected than a Black life, and how one sees that even within the systems that are prevalent in the country, systems of law that are supposed to uphold human rights for all, even within those institutions, there is ingrained racism.
Now, over in South Africa, first of all, how are you doing in the this COVID environment? Quarantined, and how's your family? And is everything good for you?
Look, Greg, it's been a tough time for everybody. It's been a tough time for everybody. We lost a cousin of mine about 2 months ago. Babantu, she passed away from COVID complications. And several families have lost loved ones. And in certain instances, 2 or 3 members of a singular household have literally died from COVID-19. So it's to be taken seriously. It's put us, I think, in a position where we have to be realistic and cognizant about the fact that we're not here forever. We have not been promised an eternal life here on earth, that we're all in transit, that we are here but for a moment. And so, how do we spend our life? How do we spend our time knowing that our time here is but temporary? And so, in as much as it has been very chaotic for so many people, I think it's also an opportunity for a spiritual revival. I think it's also an opportunity for people to reconnect with God and to decide what is important for them in their lifetime, to love completely, to let the people you know how much you care for them, to forgive perhaps quicker, because you don't know, a person is here today and tomorrow they're not. Say all the things that you want to say, live purposefully, follow your dreams as much as you can, live as authentically as you can, love your neighbor, serve them. If you've got a plate of food and your neighbor down the road doesn't have anything else to eat, how can you be of service to them? So, in as much as there is mass pandemonium globally, it's also an opportunity to draw into ourselves and to once again reconnect to the essence of who we are, the essence of creation, and even our fallibility as humanity and as human beings. Because oftentimes we live like we're not going to die. And I think when we start coming to grips with death, and that death is as much a part of life as living is, then I think we become better equipped to deal with the transitionary nature of life itself. So I've also found it to be a great opportunity. Churches have been closed, people have not been able to go to churches. So what does that mean? That you build an altar in your own home. You make your own family a hub of worship. you find a leader within your family who's going to lead a service, and you all participate in sharing the word of God and in singing. And that happened in, old Christianity, or in olden times when Christians were being persecuted and they couldn't meet in open spaces. Homes became temples and homes became sacred. So it's an opportunity to once again make our homes sacred, and make our immediate spaces sacred, as opposed to looking to an other to lead us closer to God. We're now forced to incubate that relationship with God within our own intimate spaces. So it is an
Yeah.
opportunity if we choose to see it as such.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. Incubate our relationship with God. That's a good. I think I might be using that one there. So yeah, it is an exceedingly exceedingly deep time of reflection in this day and time. And I mean, I haven't lost any family members, but I've lost a lot of friends. To the COVID, and every time you turn around, it seems like either somebody is tested positive, or you hear of someone who has passed away, and it is very real. And now, they're rolling out the vaccine, and especially in the Black community here in America, we have to kind of wonder if we're even going to take it, because they've tricked us before with the medical system, and we have that documented history. How's the vaccine rollout going in South Africa?
Well, our government is still in the process of procuring. We should have a rollout, pretty soon. It's going to be coming from India. It's AstraZeneca, the one that the government has chosen to use. And so the first line defense, which are the medics, etc., they're the first ones who will be getting the vaccine once it starts getting rolled out. It is going to be voluntary, so people may or may not take the vaccine. It's really up to them. There is a level of excitement and acceptance of the vaccine in some quarters, but in other quarters, pretty much what you're talking about, a lot of skepticism. People asking, where's the vaccine for HIV? It's taken, decades to try and solve that particular problem. How is it that within a year there's a vaccine for COVID-19? And then obviously there have been some, theories running around as to what this vaccine is actually going to do to the human body. Is it a way of population control? Is it a way of injecting some sort of a tracker inside of you? So a lot of conspiracy theories and uncertainty. So, and I guess the only thing that's really going to dispel that is time. Once we see exactly how the vaccine treats people's bodies, and once we see what the side effects possibly are, I think only then will there be a mass acceptance of it, if at all.
I read where the president of Tanzania said, "Okay, we're not going to take the vaccine. We're going to give them herbs, just natural herbs that's going to cure the COVID."
And the truth is, there are lots of remedies, I believe, that one could find from nature. And the healing of the trees, the leaves of the trees shall be for the healing of the nation. So I think there are lots of remedies, and I think there's a lot of indigenous knowledge that can be farmed out to assist in improving the body's immune system. I don't think that we were created and then just left out on earth to be victims to every single bacteria and virus that comes around. I believe that the cure is also in the earth. So one can really choose which direction they want to go. They can either go the natural route, the ones that has been tested and tried and proven, in the same way that the scientific methods also have to be tried and tested and proven. So I am a huge believer in whatever works, whatever's tested, whatever tries. If it's pharmaceutical, so be it, as long as it's not going to damage you in any way. If it's natural, as long as it's been proven and it's not going to damage you in any way, ultimately we all just want to live, and we want to live healthy lives. So wherever it is that the remedy comes from, so be it.
All right, yeah, that's a true statement right there. Let's kind of switch lanes here. I mean, when I look across, first of all, I see that you're now an anchor woman on what is it called? News Africa.
News Africa.
Wow, I didn't know. Okay, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I am loving it. I'm really
Yes. Okay.
loving
So what does that mean? So you are on the news every day?
every day I do a slot called daytime update.
Ah.
So I'm on from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Monday to Friday, and it's basically a rundown and of all the day's breaking and developing stories. So it's
Ah.
news, it's current affairs. We do some business as well in that slot. So it's amazing. It's great. It's very engaging. It just invigorating. It's challenging. It keeps me sharp, and it just helps you, I think, become better, and also be able to have important, relevant conversations that are of interest to our viewers, what people are wanting to know, and just going deeper into the subject matters, the people, the experiences, the places, the happenings that will have a bearing on not only our present, but also our future, and really dissecting the news of the day in that matter.
Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations. And then you're still doing Sacred Spaces, I see.
Oh, sacred space is just a gift from God, literally, for me. Can you believe that this year we are celebrating 15 years of the sacred space?
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
15 years of grace, 15 years of ministry, 15 years of just bringing God closer to the nation and conversing, talking about life and our problems and our issues and how to gain strength in times of challenge and worship and praise and devotion. And it's really been such an honor to be able to be on that platform, fulfilling that part of.
I mean, it's certainly a staple in South Africa. Like I was mentioning earlier, with that time you came over to meet us at the what's the name of the place over there in
It
Soweto?
was a home, wasn't it? In
It's
Cliptown.
it's so yeah. We went to Cliptown and then
Yeah, it was
but you
Cliptown.
came to the
So when,
restaurant though.
oh, Sakumzi.
Sakumzi, yes, Sakumzi
Oh,
restaurant.
yes, Sakumzi in Orlando West.
And
Yes.
you came and I was sitting there going, wow. I mean, the people were coming up to you like, oh, thank you. Oh, can I have your autograph? I mean, it was really, really something. And it really was a visual statement to me on how much, God has touched the people in South Africa through you. I mean, it was really, really something. It is genuine. I saw it. Yeah, congratulations on
We've
that.
got a very intimate and real relationship with the family, the Sacred Space family. Because every Sunday from 6 to 9, they choose to tune in. I even say to them before I'm even on air at 6 o'clock, Twitter's already buzzing, and we're on air for 5 minutes and we're already trending. And so it's literally that anticipation for the weekly dose of the word, and you know that you know what you're going to get, and all you're going to get is the word unfiltered. You're going to get communion. I mean, we are Holy Spirit led, literally, and that has always been the mandate, and I've always been very clear about that, right from the beginning, that like Holy Spirit, you take over. You know what your people need, so may you meet them in their place of need. You have your way as you go out and you minister to everybody's situation individually, wherever it is that they may be. And true to form, God never fails and the Holy Spirit always shows up. And I always say that it doesn't matter how I feel, because I might be going through a tough time in my own life. I might not be feeling too good myself. And so when I get there and minister and share the word, and afterwards people are coming and they're calling and they're saying how they were moved and touched, and I'm like, hallelujah, it can only be God. Because today I'm literally here, and the pact that I made with the Lord is, Lord, I'm just going to rock up, I'm just going to pitch, I'm just going to be physically there, because I don't have anything inside of me right now. So you'll have to drive this. And He
Ah,
drives it. And the results show that that's exactly what it is.
Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful stuff right there. I know I still love that CD that you have there with all your quotes and everything. That's a good one. I love it. Okay. So, Tommy, now, one of the things when I look over, I keep up with the news in South Africa. I love the nation, right? And I love the story of triumph in the nation against racial injustice, the brutal system of apartheid. I love the story. I love the fact that black people overcome. But now here we are, and one of the big problems in the nation I see is this gender-based violence, and it's on a real deep level, and I don't understand it. But I in this part of our conversation, I want to tell you a couple of stories. Number one, our friend Dawn Botha, she's on
Yeah.
702. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So every time I come to South Africa, known as, oh, Brother Greg, you must come on my show. So I come and I go on a radio show, and then we go to Pata Pata. Okay. So we're out there, and I'm enjoying the music, I'm enjoying the food, and, we have a driver. And when we leave out of the place, it's her and her family, is members of her family, and it's a bunch of us there. So the driver comes, and I open the door for her, and the driver like looks at me like he wanted to slap me. And so she starts teasing him, saying, "Oh, you see, do you think that's wrong that he opened the door for me?" And the guy was like, "Yeah." And I said, "So what do you mean? That shows a sign of weakness, when a man does that." And he said, "Yes." Now, when I share that story because I'm watching these news stories of intense violence against women where if the woman says no or doesn't do what he wants her to do, he basically kills her. This is what I mean, that's the bottom line. That's really kind of what's happening there in South Africa, it seems. And isn't that men have a different, why is that going on? What is the relationship between black men and black women where the brothers just kill them?
I must say, Greg, it's not a simple one-worded answer that one can give, but suffice to say, it's very complex. It's very complex, and it hasn't always been exhibited in a violent manner such as this. I have to say, though, as well, that patriarchy is something that is etched in a lot of our world cultures as well, including our African culture here in South Africa as well. And there's so many instances in history, even in politics and in business and in finance, instances where you see patriarchy being played out. As far as gender-based violence in South Africa is concerned, I think our men are angry because how do you inflict so much pain? How do you destroy somebody's life without yourself being whole? Like if you are whole within yourself, then there's no way that you can do that to somebody else. So this has to be an indicator of what South African men, and I'm not going to generalize here, but some South African men are literally grappling with. It may be issues of anger, issues of control. The unemployment figures are very high, but also I don't want to make excuses for anybody because there are some men who are super wealthy in high political positions, leading corporations, who are still abusing their wives, who are still abusing their girlfriends. So one cannot look at one's socio-economic status and say this type of man is a man that does this. So I can't even say that there's a profile for the type of man that would do this. But without a doubt, it's a huge problem in South Africa. Our president has even come out and said that this is a pandemic. We have a pandemic within a pandemic. Yes, we see COVID-19, but here we've got a serious pandemic as well that is killing our women and our children. So it really is something that has to be addressed on, I think, a very individual level. It's great that it's out there, the rhetoric is out there, we're talking about it, but it is important that this is not a fight that women are fighting against men. I think it's important that peer mentorship becomes very much a part of this solution, where men hold each other to account, where a man is not going to high five his guy because of the way that he's treating his woman, where men are able to stand up and say, no, 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 you don't do that. That is unacceptable behavior. You don't beat your woman up. You don't speak to women like that. You don't do that. So they need to hold each other accountable as well. And I think in many ways, those are the kind of conversations that we need to start shifting towards, where men are speaking about it and saying to each other, no, we cannot be treating women in this way. And I think that would be a start in really starting to change the dynamics, because gender equality, we've been fighting for that for decades. We have. But look at what we're seeing. We are having little wins in different areas. We're having little wins in corporate, little wins in politics, but we're losing our lives. We're losing our
Yeah,
lives.
it's so pervasive to me. I mean, I've read some of the stories. I mean, the one where the woman went to the post office and the post office worker told her to come back because the debit machine was broken, and when she came back, he closed the doors, raped her, and killed her. Like,
I mean, that was really tragic. The young lady that you're talking about is Uyinene Mkhwetyana, and she was a young UCT student at the University of Cape Town. Young, beautiful girl. And what happened to her was tragic. It was unnecessary, and she is but one of many women who have lost their lives. But I must say, I mean, the incident that you spoke about with Nan, I haven't really quite experienced it. I think men are different. Some men might delight in that sort of chivalry that you display, while others, depending, I guess, on who they are and what their background is, may find it somewhat offensive or may be taken aback by it, as was the gentleman that was driving your car that particular day. So I think people deal with it in different ways, I guess, depending on their socialization.
well, it caused us to have a really good, conversation about it. You know me, when I'm over there, I'm asking all kinds of questions and try to, I'm trying to feel my brothers and sisters over there. I want to understand it. And so it was an interesting. It did make for a really good conversation, and caused me just to say, wow, it's crazy, crazy. And let me just ask you, okay, so one last thing on this whole gender-based violence piece. Now, one thing that you all have in Africa that we don't have here is you have a direct route to your tribe, your nation, your traditions, right? So it's oftentimes, I see my friends who are working in great corporate jobs, and they say, "Okay, I got to go to the village," it's and it's a thing. He's like, they have to go back home and get back to the roots of the matter there, of their essence. And oftentimes, I mean, we don't really have that in, we don't have our language, our original language. We don't know our original name. But how much of this whole gender-based violence can be attributed to tribal traditions?
I think more than tribal traditions, because, Greg, you must remember that actually in African families, traditionally, the women actually do have a role of
Yeah.
being respected. Like if you just look at our language, for example, in isiZulu, a king, the name for a king is Inkosi. The name for a woman is Inkosi Gazi, or a wife is Inkosi Gazi. Gazi means more than. So you are Inkosi, which is a king, Gazi, more than. So you are more than a king. So that just in its own way, looking at the language, you can see how revered and how respected women actually are within the household. Women, especially as they get older, are always seen as wells of wisdom. They are midwives who birth and learn how to birth children into the world. And the queen mother, even the role of the queen mother in places where there are still tribal chieftains, is also, very much revered and respected. So women, if you look at it traditionally, have had and held a place of much respect. But let's also then remember that a lot of black people that had to be moved from their homes where they come from in the rural areas, and had to then come to places like Gauteng, which is Johannesburg, and Gauteng is a Sotho word which means the place of gold. So we had to move from the Transkei or the Ciskei or from wherever KwaZulu-Natal or wherever it is that you come from to come and work in centralized places. And so what that did is that really broke the family structure. It broke the family unit, and many men ended up then having wives, city wives, and then they end up having their original wives back home, and their families here and their families there. And you'll find that that is the type of culture and lifestyle that started forming because of the environment, because of the situation. And so, with the rise of companies and mining, etc., there was also an exodus from the rural areas into the urban areas and to the cities. And that then led to the formation of townships, which are then reserves, which were originally reserves for Black people to live in while they were going to the towns and commute every day to work. When it's sunset, they need to be back home in their townships until the next morning when they're allowed to go back into town as well. You'll remember there were the past laws that basically gave you access in and out of the city center, and at particular times you had to be back home, or as a black person, you would have been in contravention of the laws of the state. So I'm just painting a picture, Greg, of the
Yes.
type of social economic infrastructure that has led to the breakdown of the matrix of the family. And going back to the issues of gender based violence, one cannot dispute that, and one cannot completely put aside how the family was broken up and how men themselves were separated, from their families. And heaven knows what type of repercussions that has had. What that means is that there are young boys who grow up without their fathers, not necessarily because their fathers don't want to be there, but because their fathers are out making a living for them so that they're able to go to school and that they're able to take care of the house and the home that they have. And so there are many dynamics that have just led to the breakdown of families and boys growing up without their fathers, therefore not having male mentorship, not knowing how to conduct themselves, us having a lot of questions that nobody can answer. There's a lot of secrecy. So I guess there's a lot of pain as well that will come with that. So when I said earlier on that perhaps our men are angry and we need to look at that, we need to look at the inside causes of this fragmentation, because you've got to be fragmented inside in order to be able to, commit such crime and be violent to that extent. So I really think we've got to look at it much deeper than just in a unilateral way. It's multidimensional.
So this is making me contemplate so deeply. So the systems of supremacy, you know, it's the cause of our. So Martin Luther King said it. I'm paraphrasing here. So basically, crime or sin is caused in darkness, and what is it? Is just sin is done in darkness, but we have to see who caused the darkness. And I don't
Come
know.
on.
I'd have
Well,
to.
I guess I guess I understand what you're saying there. The fact that oftentimes we look at the end result and we judge the end result, but we don't analyze the process or the circumstances that gave birth to that particular circumstance.
Correct.
So a lot of these, what we're looking at now is a finished picture, but perhaps we ought not to be looking at the finished picture. We need to look at a blank canvas, and let's start with the various colors that were used, the different paint brushes. What was the vision of the artist? Was it exposed to direct light? Was it painted in the dark or in the light? What are the various factors that may have led to this canvas, or this painting rather? So you start off with a clean canvas, but at the end of the day, we need to look at the process that has led to this painting being what it is. So I really agree with that sentiment.
Very, very interesting. Wow, 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 wow. All right, Tommy. Another point that I'd like to just kind of talk to you about when we begin to contrast, when we look at African society, and I'm over here in the Los Angeles area, Long Beach, California, and I'm just saying, we're looking over into your world, into your perspectives. And I always find it interesting that not only do you have government and democracy and systems in place, but y'all have like kingdoms and stuff going on, right? And one of the times, I don't know if you remember when I was there, I was in Durban, I was going to the South African Traditional Music Awards, and I think we could not connect because you were in I think you were in Ethiopia or somewhere
Yeah, I
filming
was in
something, right?
Ethiopia.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And in that time, I went there, and that's the time I rented a car and I drove up into the Kingdom of Swaziland, right? And that was really a big adventure. But during that time, I met this king. He's the king of now I can't remember his name. The young guy. He was the king of the Abu Timbu
Okay, the
people.
Abutembu. Yes.
Okay, and so his father had gotten incarcerated in prison, and so he was the acting king. So I
Yes.
met him, and I actually sat next to him at this presentation, and I always, you know, look at that moment in wonder because I'm like, dang, I'm sitting next to a king. It was really, really something.
Yeah.
And I see that they've been going. That's one of the news stories over there in South Africa that he became the acting king. The father got released from prison, and he didn't want to give up his acting king post, and it's a
Yeah.
it's a
I think
big deal.
the father's name was King Tabungebo.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
okay. So, you know, why is that big news? Tell us, educate us over there on how the different monarchies around there still have, a considerable amount of influence in the society of South Africa.
Mm. I think we've got to go back, Greg, to that entire story that I was telling you about the homelands, etc. When we were colonized, remember that they found us already with systems that were working and different people with our own systems of leadership, our own own systems of survival, our own systems of education, our own systems of governance, right? And those governance were in the form of kingdoms, where instead of an elected president, you have a king or a chief who would then be the head of authority, and he would have his council and his tribal council and various elders that would then quote unquote form, I guess, his cabinet ministers, so to speak, if you want to use, a democratic terms to describe the roles that they would then fulfill. So when were colonized, those structures were found already there by the white man. And so when they basically started wanting to annex us and influence the people of South Africa and make sure that there aren't any riots and make sure that they have as much buy-in from the leadership as possible, that's when they segmented us then into different different homelands, so to speak. So you'll find the king in the Transkei, and then there'd be the Ciskei, and then in KZN. But then each different tribe has its own chiefs. Like each people has its own chiefs, and so that system has continued to be maintained even over the decades. And even now, chiefs are taken care of. They are recognized by the ANC government as legitimate leaders within the societies, although the role that they play is not as influential as it was before. They certainly hold a lot of power as far as influencing the communities that they lead, influencing perhaps in voting, influencing in getting decisions passed. They are taken care of. They form part of the fiscus and the budget, so they do get an allowance from the government, and that varies. Not all of them get the same amount. I guess it depends on how they view you, how the government views you, maybe your level of influence or the amount of influence and the power that you have. So not all the leaders actually get the same amount of money. So there is a level of influence and there is a level of respect that the community members would have for a particular chief or a particular tribal leader. But it certainly is not as stark and as rigid or as committed as it was back then. I mean, the younger generation who are very also democratic in their outlook, who believe in democracy and equal rights and all sorts of idiosyncrasies that they would perhaps not necessarily be aligned to the way of a kingdom or a chieftainship. So they're not necessarily under that covering of a chief, especially if they are in the rural areas, but they'd still certainly observe them and they'd still perhaps even recognize them. So they certainly are still influential and they have a role to play in society. Because also remember, we're not just talking about urban society. Not all of South Africa is urbanized. We have rural communities and constituents and constituencies there who are under chieftainships. And it's important to maintain, I guess, a sort of leadership through the chieftainship, which is a hierarchy that and a system that they recognize and that they honor themselves. So yeah, it would be news and it would be a big deal. So they are very much respected and they still have a place to play in society and in governance in their history book.
Sure. You talk about how when the European came and found you there in South Africa, and now you're talking about the younger generations and being a lot more democratized. So what pops into my mind at this time is just a contemplation that we've been having here in the United States, and that's about overturning statues and symbols of white supremacy in the history, of the United States, the Confederate flag, all of these people who are symbols of white oppression in America. Now people are either forcibly tearing them down or petitioning to get rid of these symbols. And it is a major discussion in our society now. I do see that with, I remember I was in South Africa and we were in Cape Town and we encountered a student protest and the call was Rhodes must fall.
Rhodes must fall.
It was like, wow.
Also John Rhodes. And that is the type of power and passion of youth. And I tell you what, that every single generation has its own upswell and uprising. And every single generation has a mandate that is uniquely theirs. So when we look at Roads Must Fall, and we will look at Fees Must Fall, which was a movement also by university students calling for equal access to tertiary education and saying that it's unfair and discriminatory for Black students to be paying these astronomical, unaffordable university, which is college fees, while their white counterparts are able to afford it. A lot of Black children don't come from homes like that. You find mothers who are domestic workers or mothers who work hard and literally just for food to put on the table. Kids who can't even afford public transportation to get to school, and also not having enough bursaries or enough funding to even be able to register. So what you found are young Black children, and they were also supported by some white students as well who believed in their cause, saying, no, fees must fall, equal opportunity for all of us to be able to better our lives and to better the lives of our families and our communities. So I say, Greg, that every generation of youth has its own struggle. And so it's important, I believe, for the generation of the day to recognize what is their struggle, what is their mandate, and fulfill that. Because ultimately, that is what seems to move communities forward, to move people forward. When you look at June 16 uprising in 1976, that groundswell came from school children. wearing uniform, who refuse to be taught in the language of the oppressor. They are the ones that went up against policemen, big men with guns, and they refused, and they were part and a very integral part of the fall of apartheid and the struggle for liberation. Even if you look at the Madibas and you look at the Walter Sisulus, and you look at all the Steve Bikos, those that we look to as the fathers of the liberation movement in South Africa, a lot of them, they started as young kids who then ended up having to go into exile. So young people and youth definitely have a part to play in moving society forward. But as I said before, it's important for the youth to recognize what is the struggle of their time and then commit themselves to that.
It's important for the folks here to know that. So when we say Rhodes must fall, we're talking about Cecil Rhodes, and yes, the Rhodes Fellowship. The Rhodes Scholar. If you're a Rhodes Scholar, that's a really big deal here in the United States, right? You guys hear about that all the time. Same guy, but over there in South Africa, you'll get the real of him. Now, educate our people on who Cecil Rhodes was in context of South African history.
Well, ultimately, he's a colonialist. And in the struggle for self-determination and in the struggle for self-identity as a Black person, any statue that basically symbolizes a person who was oppressive to you and your identity and your people, the belief is that they do not deserve to be venerated as they are right now in statues. But if you are to have a statue or a monument, let it be one of let's have Madiba, Nelson Mandela. Let's have all the struggle icons of the time. Let's have Oliver Tambo. Let's have Walter Sisulu. Let's have Steve Biko. Let those be the people who will be telling our story. But I believe that this is a very interesting argument, though, Greg. As in, when we tell our stories, which part of our stories do we want to tell? Do we want to only tell a history that is beneficial to us right now? Or do we want to tell a history that is encompassing of the totality of the experiences, not only that we have had, but the experiences that our people have had? So those are just some of the arguments that are being put on the table when it comes to the breaking down of monuments and statues. Are they there to be venerated, or are they there as a sign of where we come from and perhaps a reminder of where we do ever want to return? And perhaps that's an argument that can be for either one of the sides, whether you bring those down or you keep them there, but then you also construct the statues of those who have liberated you. Because generations down the line, what are your children going to be learning? Are they only going to learn about the liberators without learning about the colonialists? Are we only going to learn about a history that favors us? Will we be telling history only from the perspective of the victors? And is that really then an accurate portrayal of a people's history and a people's struggle?
Yeah, I know for us here, Dream Creator Studio, Beach City Radio, Coffee Conversations, it's all about telling our own stories because when we allow others to tell our story, it gets convoluted, and it gets told from certainly the oppressor's perspective almost 100% of the time. So we need to tell our own stories. And then too, linking up with people like you across the diaspora. I mean, I want to link up with broadcasters like you, and we've been talking about this for a long time. Let's keep exchanging, because the story is not only here in America, my people. It's global, and we are a global people, and we want to continue to reach back over to Mother Africa and share stories and exchange cultures, learn about one another, because we are more alike than we are different. And you see that we have the same types of things, which brings me to this last point. We've been talking to Zoli Mapipa. about
Oh,
yes, yeah. Zoli was on here with us. I had Zoli Mapipa, Skip Dillard, who's one of the top program directors in radio. He's out in New York City, and Max Myrick in Washington D.C. Some legendary black program directors in radio, and Zoli was part of that conversation. But
wow.
we're right now looking to create international bridge, building bridges of music, arts, and culture
We
through
certainly
media.
need to do that. And I must tell you this, like, oh, Babzoli Mapipa was he was station manager at Metro FM, the station that I worked for at the time. Now, he gave me my first shot in radio. I was probably 18 at that point. And I remember going to the South African Broadcasting Corporation with an older family friend who had a meeting at Metro FM. And I remember saying, "Oh, who's the station manager? I want to read news on the station." I was studying communications at the time. And so Zolima People was there. And then I said to him, "I really would love to read news on Metro FM." And he said to me, "So what experience do you have?" I said, "Well, not none, but I am a communication student. I'm very articulate and I can read well." And he literally said to me, "Go downstairs and record a demo and then come up and we'll see." And I went down to the studio, I recorded a demo, I came up, listened to it, and literally said, "Okay, you've got the weekend slot. So Saturday and Sunday, 6 a.m. in the mornings, that's when you start." And literally, he opened the door for me when it
Wow.
comes to entering radio. So I have a lot of appreciation for him, a lot of love for him, a lot of respect for him. And he certainly is legendary. And so he really just paved the way for me in that regard.
Yes, we speak fairly frequently, Zoli and I. Yes,
Uh,
good man. Yes, I
very, very good
actually,
man.
I actually met him here. He came to Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
We've hosted, broadcasters from the SABC. I've done it three times now, where they've come over here under the whole South Africa Traditional Music Awards piece, and we've given them tours of radio stations, recording studios, and all that in LA, and that's actually how I began to go up to KZN. Is the guy would fly me out there to attend his
His
event,
award.
because we took such good care of him. But Zoli came on one of those exciting times, and we actually, one of the most profound in my entire career, one of the most profound international exchanges, Tommy, was when Zoli, and he had these broadcasters. They were from the Zulu radio stations there. I mean, huge radio stations, like radio. What is it?
Of
Umkosi
course, yes,
FM.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yes, and we had a session in the same recording studio where they recorded "We Are the World." Okay, and I brought a bunch of musician friends and stuff there, and it was just an exciting, you know conversation. We were all in like one big circle talking about our different types of music, and the Zulu guys were talking about how when they do that big high kick and they stomp it onto the ground, and what that meant, and it was like, wow, we really, had no idea what that meant. We just saw it all the time in the music, but we never knew, the meaning of it. And the brother explained it to us. But there was one young kid there, and he was so quiet, and they kept saying, you got to show them your music, show them your music. This guy shows us YouTubes, and he's packing out stadiums. You've heard of the artist Kuzani?
Kusani?
Yes.
Kusani, no.
Maskandi. He's a
Mustang,
Maskandi.
yes, yes,
Yes,
yes, yes,
yes.
yes, yes, yes.
I mean, I could not believe it. This dude had like major. He's like Jay-Z big.
And Maskandi is like such a popular genre of music because that's pretty much traditional Zulu music. Like when you talk of Lady Smith, Black Mambazo, uh,
Yes.
that's the school that we're talking
Yes.
about. But Greg, I must say that you are one of the most big-hearted, hospitable people I know, apart from the fact that you're my friend and I absolutely adore you. But you always take care of everybody when we started our conversation today, you spoke about Martin Luther King Day. And if you will remember, some years back, I was in LA at the time, and you were at KJLH. And it was during the Martin Luther King birthday celebrations. Remember that big float? And we were going
Yes.
down Martin Luther King Boulevard with all of the on air personalities. And it was absolutely amazing. And even when Lyra was there, you take care
Yes.
of Lyra as well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you really, I mean, you're just such a great cultural ambassador
Ah.
to the United States, and the relationship that you just have with, I can only speak about South Africa because that's all that I know. It's just really something that I believe needs to be shared and extended. And when you bring African Americans to South Africa to experience the life here, it's really just such an eye opener, I believe, for them as well to be able to get to know, part of what life in South Africa is all about. So I just want to encourage you to continue doing a great job and to continue with your big heart. You're just awesome, absolutely awesome. So I'm
Ah.
going to give it up to you.
Thank you so much, and you awesome too. Let me just share this piece of history with y'all. So Tommy's dad was one of the leaders of the. If y'all remember, we had disinvestment, divestment. That was the movement when we were standing against apartheid and pushing for the release of Nelson Mandela. I see Molly Bell is on here. You remember all of that there, Molly Bell. But Tommy's father was one of the architects of that whole experience. Share with them what you know about your father's fights when he was here over at UCLA, fighting the good fight against apartheid.
Well, look, my dad is Tim. He is an absolute activist at heart. He is a humanitarian. He is a sucker for justice, and he just loves people. He loves offering opportunity. He is one who opens the way. That's how I see him. He's one who opens the way for others. He is absolutely amazing at spotting talent and creating opportunities even when they're not there. He did used to run as well the community service office at UCLA, and that was just such a touch point as well for so many of the students. So he is an activist. He's a humanitarian. He is a cultural activist, and just an amazing man and thinker as well. And so many people have just been touched by his life. He's managed to offer so many bursaries and scholarships to students from South Africa to go and study in the United States. And even when they're there, helping them get by. He literally becomes he's a father to everyone. That's what he is. He's a father to everybody, the type of person that you can talk to about absolutely anything. And one of the best things is to engage in Pan African conversation with him, because he's very set though in his ways, but he works from the heart. That's the one thing that I just love about him. He's a heart man, you know. Maybe a big rough and tumble, but he's a big teddy bear, you know.
That's right.
And he's well. I'll send the greetings. I see you, Molly Bell. Thank
Yes.
you so much for that beautiful message saying Johannesburg in the house. Thanks for letting us meet our family. Good job. Thanks,
Ah,
Molly.
there
I'm
we
friends with
see.
Tim Ngubeni on Facebook. Wow, Molly, I'll let him know that you are part of our conversation today. Indeed, the struggle continues always to God be the glory. Amen. Thank you, Molly. Thank you so much for that. Really
Good
appreciate
stuff.
it.
Good stuff. All right, y'all. Look, this is, we could probably go on and on and on, but our time is up. Coffee Conversations with Greg J.
I've only one question for you, Greg.
Yes.
Where's your coffee?
Yes.
I bet you that cup's empty.
Let me see. Let me see if you can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. Black coffee. You are not joking.
Yeah.
I went and I made myself a cup of tea. I'm having tea today. I literally made sure that I had a cup of tea. I was like, how can I have, coffee conversations with Greg and not have a cup of tea?
That's
So I need
right.
to, I hooked myself up.
Yes, 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 yes. Look, we got to make a grocery run around here, so I'm out of cream, but I got to have my coffee in the morning. That's
Well,
coffee
well,
that we import from Cameroon, West Africa,
oh,
Columbusong coffee. Yes, mm-hmm.
oh, that's amazing. That is amazing.
Yes.
And have you had Ethiopian coffee?
Yes, I've had Ethiopian coffee too, Kenyan coffee. I really am trying to get Zambian coffee. I was last time I was in South Africa. I was we were leaving Livingstone, and I noticed that they sold Zambian coffee. I didn't know that they had a coffee. That they grew coffee in Zambia, and so I said, okay, well, I'm gonna next time I come, I'm gonna get some Zambian coffee. And I've even had conversations with the Zambian embassy here about how to import that coffee. But we'll see. We'll see. We're still one step at a time. One step at a
Wow.
time.
Greg, I'm so happy that we managed to do this. I've had such a great time. It's been
Yes.
great chatting to you. And I just, before we round off everything, I just want to say hi to everybody. I
Okay.
see Giovanna, I
Yes.
see Sherry, I see the trees and the Rita,
Yeah.
and Cinda and Molly and Carla. Thank you so much, everybody, for all of your comments. It's really, really great
Yeah,
having
that's yes, shout out to everybody. Look, Giovanna, Dr. G is let me tell you about that woman right there. She is like one of the most fantastic women I know. She works in the construction industry.
Oh, wow.
Highly male dominated industry, but she is a senior executive for one of the largest construction companies in the United States and
Amen.
making sure
Wow.
that they are addressing their issues of diversity and inclusion. When you come to LAX, you see all of that construction out there. They're building the train that's coming into LAX. The people move.
Amazing.
Basically, you'll be able to take the train right into the airport. It's a major construction project, and she's over there making sure that they are hiring enough black folks or people of color. And she's doing the doggone thing, and every time I turn around, some group is honoring her Woman of the Year or something.
Oh,
She's awesome.
yes, doctor. Yes, that's representing. Thank you so much. It's really amazing. And what I love is that, women, black women around the world are using their voices and their places and are shining wherever God has placed them. Shine where you are. And look at as well, Kamala Harris, about to become the first black
Wow.
female vice president. And actually,
Wow.
apart from the blackness, the first female vice president,
Yes,
the
yes.
first
Is that
black female vice president. So
isn't that
certainly just
something?
making history on many levels.
I'm glad you brought up her name, and I just want to encourage the family here today. Just keep your prayers up, man. It's incredible back there in Washington D.C. And last week we were scheduled to have Congresswoman Maxine Waters on with us, but she had to cancel. And as you think about it, and you start reading about what's actually happening on the ground in Washington, D.C. We heard over the weekend we saw these news stories where the conservatives, the white supremacists is what I'm just going to go ahead and call them, are just saying, hey, you know what, there will never be a Joe Biden presidency. So, and we saw the insurrection that happened on the Capitol grounds. What are these people capable of doing? What are they planning to do? And we hope and pray that they can keep Kamala Harris safe. We hope and pray they can keep Congresswoman Waters safe. I watched a hearing by the Congressional Black Caucus, and I was just sitting there thinking, all of those black people in our highest levels of government from all over the country, keep them safe is what I just say. Lord, keep them safe, because it is a crazy, crazy time, and we don't know what these people are capable of.
And
Yeah.
we never want to think of the worst. We never want to think of the worst, but we know that as a people, we have experienced the worst. We
Yes.
have experienced our leaders. I don't even want to say anything, you know, but all we need to do is just to, keep her covered, keep the nation covered as well, and keep all, those who are aligned to the well-being of all and life. for all, keep them covered as well, because it certainly is a battle of forces. I don't think that there have been such issues of domestic terrorism in the United States as what is being experienced right now. It's a turning point moment, I believe, for the country as well. And I'm so happy, Greg, that you spoke about prayer, because this is time for the prayer warriors to arise. This is time to fight the physical battles with spiritual armor. Let those who are on the ground know that they are covered by a cloud of prayer, and that the fire of God surrounds them, and that it is His glory that will be in their midst. And only those who are going to be keeping vigil for them and interceding on their behalf can make sure that whatever plans of destruction may have been there, that those are thwarted, and that indeed light does, overcome the darkness.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, on that note, y'all, love one another. Love one another. Love one another. Peace and blessings, y'all.
Thank you so much to all of you. It's been a fabulous evening for me, and I hope it's been a great morning for you. Greg, love you lots. God bless you.
Love you lots.
God cover you. And to everybody who was part of the session today, it was great meeting you. And I hope to be seeing you again. Seeing you.
Yes, soon come, for real, for real. Listen, I'm gonna reach out to you offline because I have a few things I want to ask you, but we got to keep it going now that we are reconnected. We got to keep it going.
I think I know one of them.
All right, very good. Peace and blessings.